Hello and welcome to the Cute Baby Tutorials using Gimp. I may do a few things in this video, so if you want to go straight to one of the main sections, then the times they start are shown on your screen now. These videos are also available in higher definition on my website, along with any original files I'm allowed to give you in case you want to work on the same image as me. Just click on the link below. Okay, here we go. Now the sharpest people amongst you will notice two things about this photograph. One is that it's not a picture of a child or a baby or anything like that. I'd been for a walk with my young son and I had him sat on my lap. I was taking his shoes off and mine as well, and I was going to put his shoes somewhere else, but then he turned around and said, "No, Daddy, put my shoes with yours and they can be friends." And of course then he toddled off and I immediately went, "Oh, my little boy, I love him so much." But hey, I'm a dad, I'm allowed to do that. I'm allowed to get a bit mushy just as long as I keep it to myself and I don't go talking about it all over the internet. The second thing you'll notice about it is it's in black and white. The reason I'm doing black and white is because we're going to be talking about curves in this session, and they can be a little bit difficult to get your head around, but once you do, they're probably the most powerful color adjustment tool you've got. Now the reason I've done this as a black and white photograph or a grayscale image is because when we open the curves dialog box, it'll probably be easier to get your head around just making dark things darker and light things lighter. But for now, we'll do what we usually do. We'll create a folder, call it Fix, and we'll take our original image, duplicate it, call it Base, and we'll drag that into the Fix folder. And there we go, we're ready to go now. Alright, just very quickly, I'll come to Colors, Brightness, Contrast, because what I want to do is increase the contrast of the image. Let's do that very simply. I'm going to up the contrast, and you can see the dark's getting darker and the light's getting lighter. Another way of saying that is the light values are increasing and the dark values are getting lower. Alright, that's fairly straightforward, so we'll cancel that. And that's the problem with this picture. I mean, it's looking very grey at the moment. There's not much contrast between the dark and the light areas, and we can check that if we come over here to the colour palette, and we've got our three sliders at the bottom, the red slider, the green slider, the blue slider. Now if you mix red, green and blue in equal parts, you'll get some kind of a grey, and we can check that if we come over to the colour picker, and I'm going to click on, it looks like inside my son's shoes are probably the lightest area of this picture, so I'll click on there, and whatever is underneath, that's its value. 205, 205, 205. It's a light grey, but it's not white, or it's not a very light grey. We could do with that being a bit lighter. Okay, let's click on a darker part of the picture. Try this part of the shoe. Yeah, that value is 78, 78, 78, which is kind of a darkish grey, which, again, that could do with being made a little bit darker. Incidentally, these values go in between. I'll just take the red one. 0 and 255. If I take that down to, I'll type it in, it'll be easier. 127, 127, and 127. That, you can see just in that box the colour we've got. That is a middle grey, bang on the middle between 0 and 255. So you've got 000 is black, and 255, 255, 255 is white, and in the middle 127, 127, 127 is middle grey. Okay, let's go to the Levels palette and we'll take a look at this a little bit more. You come up to Levels. Did I call it palette? I meant dialog box, I'm sorry. That is the lightest part of my image. I can see I've got just 1 or 2 pixels which are kind of a lightish grey there. And if I come down this grayscale, that part of the graph shows the darkest part of my images. It's definitely not black. This is black. This is middle grey, or 127, 127, 127, red, green and blue. And this is white. So we'll do what we've done before. I'll take my black box and slide it up. And I'm telling Gimp now that I want these dark greys, I want them to be my new black. I'm going to come to the white triangle, slide it down, and I'm telling Gimp, well, I want these values here, which were light grey, now I want them to be my new white. So what I've done is, I've increased the contrast. There we go, we've done that before. And if I want to adjust the overall tone of the picture, I can slide my little middle grey slider around to make it lighter or darker as I want. Simple. Right, let's call up colors, curves. There you go, run away now because it looks ridiculously complicated. At first, it can take a bit of getting your head around this, but once you do learn how to use it, it's the most powerful color and level adjustment box you've got. In some ways, it's similar to the levels palette. You've still got your little grayscale underneath that shows all my dark pixels, all my black pixels, which I've got none, and that little dot there. Let's go up it. Now you can see my graph in the background, all grayed out. That's where my darkest values are. That's the various different levels going through to lighter grey, lighter grey, lighter grey, lighter grey, lighter grey, lighter grey. And that's my lightest grey right there. Instead of sliding things along a flat line, I've got this line at an angle. That's my black point. Think of it, that could be my black triangle. And that point there, that white point there at the top, that's like my white triangle. Okay, there's no middle grey triangle, so that's fine. We can put one in there. Look at the top right. I've got two little figures there, X and Y there. I'm trying to get that onto 127 and 127 there, and I'm going to click a point. That's a bit like my grey triangle now. If I move that up, I'm saying to Gimp, I want red 127, green 127, blue 127, or the middle grey. I want that to get lighter. If I pull it down, I'm saying I want the opposite. I want that colour to get darker. Okay, let's pull it up. And as you can see, as I push it up, the whole image is getting brighter. That's because I've taken my middle grey and I've pushed it up. Take a look at this little line going down, this little grey line. That was your original line. Because I've pushed it up, I've got a curve. The middle grey has been pushed up, but also the grey surrounding it, well, they're also quite a distance away from that little grey diagonal line, which was our original line. But as you get closer towards the white, the distance between the curve and that, let's call it the center line, gets less. So the lights have been affected less by this, same with the other end. The black hasn't been affected at all, but as I start going towards that middle grey, you can see the distance between the curve and the middle line is getting greater, and so the values at that point have been affected more. Okay, I'll show you something else. If I want to get rid of that point, I can just drag it off to the side and get rid of it. Once you drag it off the edge of the graph, you lose it. If I bring this light point and bring it right down, and if I take this black point and bring it up, I've got a very shallow line going on here. And you can see the image is looking almost completely grey with just a little bit of detail there. There's hardly any contrast in there. So as a rule of thumb, the shallower this line is, the less the contrast. Similarly, if I take it and I make a steep line, look at the image now. There's a much greater contrast. So the steeper the line, the more contrast you get. Okay, I'm going to reset that a second. Now, if I take my darkest point and slide it to the start of the dark grey pixels, and if I take this light point and try and slide it about there to where the start of the bright pixels are, and I put a point in the middle and I move it up or down, that's pretty much exactly what I was doing with the levels dialog box. I've set my darkest point, I've set my lightest point, and I'm sliding the middle value up and down. So far it does pretty much exactly the same thing. Reset that. Only with this, you can have more than one middle grey triangle. You can have as many points on here as you want. I'm going to put one here and one here. I want to slide this value up. I want to slide this value down. Now I've got a contrasty image, but you remember what I was saying about steep lines, shallow lines? This line here is steeper than it was before. So that means any values in between that point there and that point there are more contrasty. This part here is more shallow than that line. So any points between that point there and the end of the graph, the contrast is less. That's the key to curves. I can actually put as many points as I want. Supposing I wanted to up these values here. Supposing I wanted to make those dark greys a little bit lighter, but keep the very dark greys down here. Now I can either drag it with my mouse, and you're seeing that the shadows are getting a little bit lighter here, or if I want to do precise adjustments, I can come to my keyboard and press my up-down arrow keys, which nudges it up and down. But I only want to affect the dark greys, so I'm going to put an anchor point there to stop this upper part of the curve from moving. So now I can get some pretty weird effects here. And you can see one of the problems with this. Look at my shoes. They're getting really greyed out here. I've got a lot of contrast here, but very little contrast there, and that's why these areas around here, well, the darker areas, they've got more contrast fine, but the middle dark areas, they're starting to get very greyed out. That's why it's very easy to make mistakes with this. And one thing you can do with this, I'll just lose some points to reset. There you go. All my middle greys have been squashed. I can even make them, the middle greys, inverted like this. So the dark greys stay the same, the light greys stay the same, but the middle greys get flipped around. Very powerful tool, but it's easy to mess things up. That's a classic gotcha where you get too shallow a curve there, which greys things out. But this here is the classic S-shaped curve when you want to increase contrast. But it can get even more powerful when you use this with color, and we'll do that next.